news tonight, Israeli intensified its crackdown on Jewish extremists as the Security Cabinet approves the use of harsh measures to combat the trend. For the first time, the United States Air Force deploys a fleet of 6 F-16 warplanes, and the Pentagon plans to send refueling planes to Turkey to help operations against Daesh terrorist group. And Crown Prince Hussein inaugurates the King Abdullah Park in Irbid, providing the northern city with a 15 million JD recreation facility to host leisure, sports and social activities. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Israel intensified its crackdown on Jewish extremists, jailing 2 high-profile radicals for 6 months without charge and arresting additional suspects in the West Bank settlement outposts. The crackdown comes after a deadly firebomb attack late last month on a Palestinian home in the West Bank. Israel's Security Cabinet approved the use of harsh measures to combat the trend, including administrative detention, which allows Israel to hold suspects for lengthy periods without charge. The 2 men were placed under administrative detention for their suspected involvement in an extremist Jewish organization. A 3rd suspect was similarly detained last Tuesday, accused of being involved in recent terrorist attacks as part of a Jewish terror group. Also today, Israeli police arrested at least 7 people and 2 unauthorized settlement outposts in the north of the occupied West Bank. And in the West Bank, residents in Palestinian villages are taking matters into their own hands. The horrific arson attack last month that killed a father and his son has led many residents to join self-formed night patrols in the territory. The patrol members say there are 80 people like them, and they are looking for Jewish settlers that may come across. In Qusra village, patrol members have got a lookout and fences and have signal system to inform each other if they see settlers, in hopes to prevent more arson attacks.
If they got weapons or, robberies or something, and because a lot of Jews come here and make some problems, burning some houses and everything.
Although they're armed only with baseball bats and flashlights.
Over to Syria, Daesh terrorists killed at least 37 rival insurgents in an overnight attack in Syria's Aleppo province, and 20 fighters remain missing, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. A suicide bomber blew himself up in a military post in Housh village, after which the terrorists seized the village following heavy clashes. Elsewhere in northwest Syria, the insurgents regained control of several villages from government forces, edging closer to the village of Sahl al-Ghab, a coastal stronghold of President Bashar al-Assad. Government warplanes and helicopters carried out 80 strikes on the villages, according to the Syrian government officials. Amateur videos uploaded to social media websites purported to show clashes between rebels and regime forces and fighters of the Free Syrian Army targeting what is said to be a regime tank. For the first time, the United States Air Force has deployed a fleet of 6 F-16 warplanes to Turkey to help operations against the terrorists. The warplanes were stationed at Aviano Air Base in Italy and landed in Turkey's Incirlik Air Base this afternoon. The new jets that will put U.S. forces only 30 minutes away from Daesh targets inside the Syrian territories were accompanied by support equipment and around 300 personnel. The deployment marks the first time since an international coalition began bombing Daesh in Iraq and Syria a year ago that U.S. jets will launch strikes from Turkey. Additionally, a search and rescue team of elite Air Force pararescue men and their helicopters will be heading to Turkey shortly after the jets are deployed. The Pentagon also plans to send refueling planes, which will increase the combat range for the F-16 fighters by allowing them to carry out prolonged flights over Syria. In Moscow, meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the United States should cooperate with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to fight Daesh, and that he finds it strange that Washington refuses to recognize Assad as partner. In comments to Russian state TV published by his ministry today, Lavrov said fighting Daesh requires an international coalition uniting against a common enemy. The coalition he is proposing would consist of those fighting Daesh on the ground, including the Syrian and Iraqi army, the Kurds, and part of the armed opposition that represents Syrians. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, Lavrov is due to discuss Syria and Daesh with Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Ejber in Moscow on Tuesday. Over the past 24 hours and in the continued fight against Daesh terrorists in Iraq and Syria, U.S.-led forces conducted an overall 23 airstrikes. 16 strikes in Iraq targeted Mosul, Ramadi, Sinjar, Kirkuk, Fallujah, Tal Afar, Makhmur, and Kabbaniya, destroying excavators, tactical units, buildings, and weapons. While in Syria, 7 airstrikes concentrated around Hasakeh, Aleppo, and Kobani struck a bunker, a tank, anti-aircraft artillery pieces, and tactical unit, said a statement by the Combined Joint Task Force. Kurdistan Workers' Party militants attacked a military outpost and a police car in southeast Turkey overnight, killing a policeman, according to security sources. The attack has further jeopardized an already fragile peace process as the Kurds accused Turkey of violating a 2013 ceasefire. The leader of Turkey's pro-Kurdish HDP urged the militant Kurdistan Workers' Party to halt the surge in violence and launch talks instead. Here's more.
For the second night in a row, protesters and petrol bombs lit up the night sky in southeastern Turkey. On Friday, 3 people were killed and 7 wounded during clashes between police and members of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. That prompted PKK supporters to take to the streets Friday night and again on Saturday. The leader of Turkey's pro-Kurdish political party urged the militant PKK to, quote, remove its finger from the trigger, and said the government should launch talks to halt a surge in violence. The militant PKK has long fought to create an independent Kurdistan, but agreed to a ceasefire in 2013 to negotiate with the Turkish government. Meanwhile, in Germany and Paris, large numbers of Kurds came out to denounce policies of the Turkish government. Representative of the Democratic Council of Kurdistan in Paris, Yekbun Eksen, said it was up to the government to embrace the now fragile peace process.
Turkey has to change, has to stop its anti-Kurdish policy, because it also obscures the other threats in the region, like Islamic State. And it's an obstacle for peace in the Middle East. It's an obstacle for peace in Turkey, for all people living in Turkey.
Violence has swept eastern Turkey since last month when the PKK ramped up attacks on security forces and Ankara launched reciprocal airstrikes against the militants in Turkey and northern Iraq.
Iraq's Council of Ministers approved a package of reform measures, including cancelling the positions of Vice President and Deputy Prime Minister. It followed a call by Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi to remove the positions as part of an initiative to improve state finances and reduce corruption. The measures, which require parliamentary approval, were announced in an online statement. They follow weeks of protest in Baghdad and southern cities demanding a better government and a call on Friday by Iraq's leading Shiite cleric for al-Abadi to do more. Iraq has 3 vice presidents, 2 Shiite and a Sunni, and 3 deputy prime ministers, a Shiite, a Sunni, and a Kurd. The constitution gives al-Abadi the right to dismiss ministers with parliament's consent. President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Murrer, on a visit to Yemen to assess the humanitarian situation toward damaged homes in the historic old city of the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. Murrer met Yemen's health minister, the deputy foreign affairs minister, the president of the Supreme Revolutionary Committee, and the head of the presidential office, his office said. He also visited the capital's main hospital and its only burn unit and was due to visit the southern port city of Aden. Murrer's 2-day visit aims to ensure that all sides of the conflict abide by the rule and principles of warfare and international humanitarian law.
I have come to Yemen to have myself an own view on the impact of the recent warfare, and here in the old city of Sana, this is obviously one place which, amongst many others in the country, which have been affected. And what strikes me is to see how the destruction of the building is affecting much more than the very buildings, because the architecture is so refined that the whole street is affected, and therefore people have been displaced far beyond the very protected site of the old building.
A sailboat with some 300 migrants on board arrived on the shores of a beach on the Greek island of Kos after crossing a part of the Aegean Sea from Turkey. This came hours after five dinghies carrying around 300 other migrants reached Kos earlier in the day, full of jubilant migrants that included children. Greece, among other European countries, is struggling to handle the influx of tens of thousands of refugees that are arriving on its shore from Syria, Afghanistan, and other war zones. The influx has triggered what the Greek Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, has dubbed as a humanitarian crisis within the economic crisis, leading him to call on Europe for help in dealing with the refugee crisis unfolding in the cash-strapped country. In Afghanistan, the Taliban claimed responsibility for a suicide bomb attack at a gathering of Afghan local militia forces loyal to the government, killing at least 25 militia members and 4 civilians. A group of militia were holding a security meeting in the Khanabad district of northern Kunduz province when the suicide bomber blew himself up. Several Afghan civilians and militia were also wounded in the attack. According to the UN, almost 5,000 civilians were killed or wounded in the country in the first half of the year. Back here at home, a new recreational facility was opened in Irbid today, giving the population in the north a space where they can enjoy leisure, sports and cultural activities. His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein unveiled the commemorative placard at the entrance of the King Abdullah Park, which covers 187 dunums of land. Prince Hussein planted an olive tree and toured the 15 million JD Park, comprising a conservatory, a bird garden, sports facilities and playgrounds, as well as a water area, including an artificial 280-meter-long river. Ajax Amsterdam put the disappointment of their surprise early elimination from the Champions League behind them as they began the Dutch season with a 3-0 with AZ Alkmaar. All 3 goals were scored in the first half, 2 from Anwar El Ghazi. 2 minutes later, Ajax's new Serbian singer Nemanja Gude, who had moved from AZ in May, made matters worse for his old side when he scored the 3rd goal. Sydney's annual City to Surf race kicked off with more than 80,000 runners taking part in the race, including Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Australian brand Milosevic won in a time of 42 minutes and 15 seconds, while the first woman to compete a 14-kilometer run to Bondi Beach was Queenslander Cassandra Fien in a time of 46 minutes and 39 seconds. Competitors find the most difficult part of the course a 2-kilometer steep incline called Heartbreak Hill at the halfway mark. The City to Surf started in 1971 and raises millions of dollars for various charities across Australia. The course record to date is 40 minutes and 3 seconds, set in 1991. And finally, moderate conditions continue for the rest of the night with northwesterly light winds. Tomorrow temperatures will slightly drop, nearing their seasonal average. Normal summer condition will prevail in hilly areas, but it will remain relatively hot in the Jordan Valley and Aqaba. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk, raising dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate to brisk winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. Israel intensifies its crackdown on Jewish extremists as the Security Cabinet approves the use of harsh measures to combat the trend. For the first time, the United States Air Force deploys a fleet of 6 F-16 warplanes, and the Pentagon plans to send refueling planes to Turkey to help operations against Daesh terrorist group. And Crown Prince Hussein inaugurates the King Abdullah Park in Idlib, providing the northern city with a 15 million JD recreation facility to host leisure, sports and social activities. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.